Hey, this is Derrik Jordan. Welcome to the World Fusion Show, where we bring you the leading innovators in world fusion music. Today, my guest is Brian Shankar Adler, who is a percussionist and composer. Welcome, Brian, to the World Fusion Show.
Thank you, Derrik. It's great to be here.
It's really nice to have you. And I wanted to start by asking you about your early life. And you had an unusual upbringing in that you grew up in an ashram, and that's where you got your interest in tablas and really in music started in the ashram. Want to tell us about that, please?
Sure, happy to. So I grew up in upstate New York, and it was in a Hindu community where at an early age, I was given a set of tabla, an instrument called a mridang, which is sort of a hybrid between a mridangam and a pakawaj, but played with a tabla style. And a part of the daily routine there involved a lot of music. Music was a part of the central culture. And there I was exposed to, lots of Hindustani rhythms, education in that pedagogical system, as well as the opportunity to play for many services and, just performance opportunities within that music from before I could even remember. So I lived there from basically 0 to 10. And then from then on, it was a very quick pivot to other improvised musical forms, and playing drum set, studying jazz, listening to a lot of jazz, some jam band music as it was upstate New York and, in a certain time. And then I found my way to New England Conservatory in Boston, was there for 4 years, graduated, and then moved straight to New York, where I began the pursuit of, how to make a living playing music that is very similar to the name of this show, blends together, many kinds of things, influences from all over the world, where I, often found myself in new music situations, classical situations, world music situations, and jazz situations, and even more so in situations where it was kind of in between, in that murky, beautiful territory where things could be discovered.
Yeah, well, the murky world of world fusion. Welcome to it. When I started the show 6.5 years ago, there wasn't really a name for this music. It wasn't called World Fusion, but I thought I would try to help brand it by naming the show World Fusion Show. And, I think I've made some contribution in terms of that, which is great. Because, hey, that's kind of what it is, isn't it? And there's a lot of ways to do it. So what are your early inspirations musically from musicians that really impressed you?
Sure. So, very early on, Zakir Hussain, Ala Raka, a lot of my teachers in this community, of course, Ravi Shankar, my namesake. And then from then on, I really started to identify with Elvin Jones, Tony Williams, of course, Jack DeJohnette. Then, as my taste and as I got a chance to hear more and more music, I started identifying with folks further towards the fringes of creative music, folks in the AACM, Milford Graves. I know your former teacher, Susie Ibarra, John Hollenbeck, Nasheet Waits, folks like that, Billy Drummond, and then folks who, in my opinion, were able to deal with different stylistic narratives, or coming from various traditions with a sense of authenticity to create their own musical voice that fused them. Nana Vasconcelos, and so many others.
Oh, there's such a long list, I know. Sorry to make you go down the list, but I think for our audience, it's helpful for them to get a sense of where you're coming from. So tell us about this first video we're going to see with Palaver Strings.
Sure. So Palaver Strings is a string orchestra in Maine. They're musician-led, and in the start of the COVID pandemic, I and my family moved to Maine, and I found myself Googling what musicians are out here, who's here, what are they doing, and I quickly became interested in what Palaver was doing, and we fortuitously had an opportunity to connect and make music up at a chamber music festival in Camden with Kinan Azme. And it was a blast. There was so much energy and synergy in that moment, and we played his music and my music and all of our music together. And then Palaver commissioned me to write a piece for them, as well as arranging some other pieces, and we went on tour together. Long story short, the piece we're about to hear is with Palaver Strings, with Kinan, with myself. It is playing a Kinan Azme piece called Suite for Improvisers, and there's a lot of Syrian influences in his music. And in this particular piece, it's in 15, or at least the bulk of it is, a meter of 15 beats per cycle. And the section that I solo over, sometimes I think of it as 3 groups of 5. Sometimes I think of it as 5 groups of 3. Sometimes I think of it as like a big 2 that takes 30 beats to come around. And sometimes I think of it as like a 5 plus a 4 plus a 3 plus a 2 plus a 1, which has this funny reduction that's very typical of Indian music. And I kind of float between there. So I hope you enjoy.
Oh, yeah, it's great. All right, let's go to the video right now. are back with Brian Shankar Adler and a very cool video we just watched with Keenan Asme and Brian soloing his butt off. Good stuff. All right. So tell me more about your concept of the World Fusion Global Mashup and CDs you've released.
Sure. So you're putting me on the spot to think about how many CDs I've released, but there's quite a number of CDs that I've put out either under my own name or collaboratively with various other artists. A lot of it was centered in my New York days from this great little world music club called Barbez. And in this back room, this tiny little back room, very, very cool things would happen. And a lot of meetings took place. In fact, meetings that connect to the next two groups that you'll feature. Bombay Ricky is one of them. And this is a global mashup, it combines surf rock and cumbia and spaghetti western and Bollywood and film noir, led by a coloratura soprano. It is a blast. And what makes it really fun for me is that it's really fun music. It's not like serious, intense. It's a party band, essentially. And this particular band has released 3 CDs, one very recently, self-titled Bombay Ricky. We're performing a bunch all over the place. And let's see, this particular song is an Ima Sumac song. If you're not familiar with Ima Sumac, she was a Peruvian opera singer who was also a sort of fusion mashup artist performing folkloric music, opera, and a lot of other things. And she had a huge range, as does our lead singer, Kamala. So this is a clip this is a full rendition of Takirari by Ima Sumac.
That's great. It's pretty crazy stuff, I have to say. Let's go to the video right now.
Che ceneritera, a te solito io decoro. Mambo mambo che ceneritera, a te solito io decoro. A te solito giochiamo a te solito io decoro. A te solito giochiamo a te solito io decoro. Ehi mambo!
Hey, we are back with Brian Shankar Adler. And Brian, I wanted to ask you about teaching. I know you do a lot of that, and touring.
Sure. So currently I am teaching at a few different institutions at Bates College in Maine, Bowdoin College also in Maine. I teach private lessons. I also teach ensembles, currently a beyond percussion ensemble, which has been a real blast, as well as composition classes, workshops, improvisation classes and workshops. And I find it a nice way to balance out the holistic version of what it is to be a musician and to keep the tradition moving forward. And touring, which you asked about, I tour with various projects, many of which are my own, and then one nice, fun anchoring tour that I've been doing for the last 2 years has been with Ballet Hispanico, doing a show called Doña Perón, which is a different narrative of Evita Perón's life. And I love it. It's a blast because, the score is gorgeous, but it allows me to play another facet of the percussion that I play, which is percussion from South America. Half my family's from South America, and I'm very much a part of, I go down regularly to Argentina. I'm going down to Colombia soon. And this just allows me to play those instruments and in an authentic context to develop those sounds.
That's great. So would you introduce this next video to our audience?
Sure. So speaking of that, there's this great piano player that I also met through the Barbès scene in New York named Emilio Teobal. And he has a trio and he writes gorgeous music that is, to my ear, influenced by Debussy, Piazzolla, as well as Philip Glass. So it's bringing like a South American thing, a minimalist thing, and a classical thing together, as well as a jazz thing as well. And we met and were talking about playing many years in New York, but it wasn't until I moved to Maine where we started playing, and we recorded this next piece that you will hear remotely in the pandemic, where he played his part, and then he sent it to the bass player who played his part, and then they sent it to me. But, we're talking to each other in that moment through that process. So it's pretty fun. This piece is a piece of his called, actually, I forget the name of it right now, but it might say it on the YouTube.
All right. Very good. Let's go to the video right now. Hey, we are back with Brian Shankar Adler. I wanted to ask you about your composition process and, what you're doing with that. I know you said you also were starting a piece for Gamelan Orchestra.
Yes, exactly. So composition is a large part of my practice, one that I've been leaning in more and more as I age, and it's just a very fun process. It often starts with me sitting at the drum set and thinking, what kind of music do I want to play around? What do I want to hear and be able to play the ideas that I have in my head? And most ideas come from that kind of springboard. You mentioned the gamelan piece. I just finished a piece for gamelan plus cello plus myself that will be debuted in April and hopefully recorded soon thereafter. And I've been writing pieces for strings and for various film projects. So it's been a lot of fun, as well as different projects for improvisers. And the next piece that you'll hear, or that we will all hear, is a duo project called Airspace that began about 3 years ago with a great keyboard player named Mike Effenberger. And he and I started playing, and we bring together his own compositions and my compositions and kind of have this dialogue that we describe as the soundtrack to the somnambulist night in the deep woods. So this is a piece of mine called Sediment, and it's in 5/4, also like the Kinan piece, similar to like an Indian japtal or a 5-beat, 10-beat cycle. Dan din 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 tin tin tin.
Right.
It's also like a blues.
A blues.
Yeah.
We like that. There's the world fusion, right?
Exactly.
All right, very cool. So let's go to the video right now. back, I just want to thank you so much, Brian Shankar Adler, for being with us today on the World Fusion Show.
Oh, thank you, Derrik. It's been a real pleasure. I've enjoyed speaking with you, and what you're doing for the music community is such a service, and so welcome and appreciated. So thank you.
Thank you so much, and I'm so glad we got to share your music with our audience. Hey, this is Derrik Jordan. Thank you for joining us today on the World Fusion Show. It's been great to have you. Please subscribe on YouTube and Facebook on our channels and tell your friends. Also, I'd like to give a big thank you to our sponsors, Mackenzie Family Charitable Trust, Chris Pratt, Nancy Feinberg, and Ron Dans for their generous support. And as we always like to say on the show, remember, think globally, listen locally, and support independent music.